Question, if the Arizona law isn't the right way to go, then what reform should be enacted? I'll give that to Chuck.
Well, thank you. Well, first of all, Georgia can't enact immigration reform. You know, Georgia legislatures can't say, let's pass a more generous legal immigration program. Let's have a temporary worker program that actually works. Let's have a legalization program. That's not coming from the state of Georgia. The reality is the state of Georgia shouldn't be involved in this process. Congress, though, should be. There are a number of different types of comprehensive immigration reform packages out there, but all of them basically have 5 points. One, we want border security. Let's not kid ourselves. I don't know a single person who says, gee, I wish we had more illegal immigration in America. No, nobody says that. Nobody wants to have illegal immigration, and nobody wants to be an undocumented immigrant. So we need to have real border security, which I think we are really getting close to coming. Now let me ask you this question. Next time somebody says to you, well, I'm in favor of a reform after we secure the border, you ask them this. What does that mean? What do you mean by secure the border? I mean, do you mean to build a big fence around America and stretch Glenn Beck over the top and nobody gets in? Is that what you're talking about? I mean, what is it? Make people define what they're talking about. John McCain, the former advocate for comprehensive immigration reform, says not until the border's secure. Define it for me. I mean, nobody's coming. If their idea is it's secure and nobody's coming across, we'll never have reform. I mean, it's an end game that can't be met if that's the standard. But we need more border security and better and more intelligent border security. Two, we need to go after employers who violate the law. Employers who are creating a competitive disadvantage to the employers who follow the law. And that's something that Clinton and Bush did not do. They did not go after employers, and it's something that Obama is in fact doing aggressively. Just this last week, 500 more notices went out to 500 more employers. That's 495 more people than Bush ever did in any single year in an audit. So enforcement's going on, and we can go after employers and hold them accountable for breaking the law. Three, we need to have a temporary worker program that recognizes that not everybody wants to immigrate to America. Before we closed down the border after September 11th, and we have effectively closed it down in many ways, people would come and go. They would come. That's been the history of the southern border forever. Heck, it's been the history of the northern border. Don't kid yourselves, for a very long time. Nobody says anything about all the illegal Canadians, eh? Nobody's saying anything about them. But we shut that down. So people stopped going home. We need a temporary worker program that reflects reality and that changes with our economy. When our unemployment rate goes up, the numbers go down. When unemployment goes down, the numbers go up. The same thing for legal immigration, the fourth tier. Have a system in place that actually reflects the economic and familial reality of our society today. People want to immigrate legally. It's estimated that at least a third, over 3 million of the people that are here undocumented, are actually in the line. They just couldn't wait any longer. How long would you stay away from your children? And fifth and finally is a legalization program of some kind that puts everybody at the back of the line. Nobody gets permanent residence before everybody who's in the line. They pay a fine, they pay their taxes, they do what's right. We don't let people who have criminal records in the country. And then all of a sudden, my gosh, you have actually solved this problem.
Do opponents of comprehensive immigration reform state that there are economic benefits to deporting illegals? If so, what are they?
Well, opponents of CIR state a lot of things. Very few of them are factual. I think that what they say is that undocumented immigrants cost a lot of money and are using a lot of benefits and services. You know that many Americans believe that undocumented immigrants come here and they're immediately eligible for all kinds of special benefits and programs that US citizens are not eligible for. And we know that that's absolutely not true. Undocumented immigrants are not eligible for the vast majority of programs. The Federation for American Immigration Reform came out with a really big report a couple of months ago where they tried to estimate the cost of illegal immigration. And if you go through this thing carefully, which I think they're betting that nobody actually did, but I did, there are several major problems with it. First of all, a huge, huge percentage of the costs they're attributing to illegal immigration are actually the costs of education and health care for the children, the US citizen children of undocumented immigrants. The other thing that they charge undocumented immigrants with is the entire enforcement budget of DHS. So they're basically saying that undocumented immigrants, it's a cost of undocumented immigrants that's charged directly to them, you know, the failed enforcement system that we keep piling more and more and more money into. And then they put a big, you know, dollar sign on it and say that that's the cost of undocumented immigration. You know, again, I don't think that that is the case, and there are certainly many more contributions, and that comprehensive immigration reform would be economically beneficial. The other thing that they'll often say, especially now in this economy, is that undocumented immigrants are taking our jobs, and if we just deport 7 million people, then we'll have 7 million more jobs for US citizens. And I guess that seems like a pretty easy message, right? Like, why wouldn't that be the case? But, you know, in fact, again, very smart economists have shown over and over again that that is not, in fact, the case, that US citizens would not automatically take those jobs. Undocumented immigrants work in very different jobs. They have different levels of education and experience, and they work in different parts of the country. So if you think that it's really a response for an unemployed auto worker with 20 years of experience in Detroit to move to California to pick lettuce, I don't think that that's a very good long-term solution to the current economic difficulties. And furthermore, we know that, again, not only are undocumented immigrants working, but they are paying taxes, they are consuming, and that helps support jobs. And if we were to somehow magically make them all disappear, we would see a drop in GDP. We would see our economy suffer when all of those taxpayers and workers and consumers leave the United States.
If an Arizona-type law passed in Georgia, besides apartments and homes, what would the economic impact be on real estate businesses, especially shopping, strip malls, shopping centers, and sports and entertainment venues?
Wow. Well, you know, I think I'm not an economist, so the fact that economic questions are coming to me is kind of funny. But, you know, again, the cost of this would be, if we're successful in jailing and deporting immigrants, that means that those people would no longer be here. They wouldn't be working, contributing taxes. They wouldn't be earning money and buying things. So they wouldn't be renting apartments, buying houses, or buying tickets to sports events, I guess. So I think that all of these businesses would suffer. And remember, a lot of those businesses are owned by immigrants. They're owned by Latinos. They're owned by Asians. And those businesses would certainly suffer as a result.
You know, Mark, this has already happened. This has already happened in Hall County and Whitfield County when they adopted 287G. Go to Gainesville, go to Dalton, and you will see empty houses, empty apartment complexes, empty schools, empty businesses, empty shopping centers. It will literally empty out. But understand, people aren't going home. They're just going into hiding.
After undocumented individuals are detained or deported, who will pay for the care of their underage children, U.S. and non-U.S.? How much will it cost the state of Georgia?
Well, you know, the reality is that the state of Georgia and the federal government can't deport children who were born here. And so what happens to them? Well, ICE will always say, well, you can take your kid with you. We can't send them, but you can have somebody bring them to the border and meet you there if you want to do that. But I know a number of families over in Cobb County where both parents have been removed because of DWH. You guys know what that is, right? Driving while Hispanic. It happens a lot over in Cobb County. And they left their teenage kids here. They left their kids here, alone. One family that I know has a 15, a 13, and a 12-year-old here, by themselves. No state's looking after them. I mean, the reason I found out is because the school just found out and is taking effort. So that means the state's going to bear that burden. The county's going to bear that burden. It's not going to be the federal government. I can assure you they're not coming in and doing it. So what this does by having a law like this is it destroys families, which is really a greater tragedy of all.
How do we get the Georgia agricultural industry to stand up for the legalization of their migrant workers? When agriculture currently benefits financially from the broken immigration system, how can we convince agricultural interests that they can suffer a financial loss, but it's still worth it to them?
Well, the economic costs are key, and I dispute the fact that they're benefiting from this. I believe that they're neutral. Now, you have to differentiate between the national corporate farms, Monsanto, Tyson, these large 1,000, 10,000 acre farms. They may be economically because, again, they are mechanized and they're not dependent. But when the small and average farmer sees the cost of not having the workers, when he cannot get his chickens or plucked, or his peaches picked, or his potatoes dug, then it'll change. But until that time, we just have to continue to push for an economically rational policy, as Mr. Delgado says, and we need to continue, myself included, pushing the idea that we are dependent on these workers. We cannot get our farms working without them, and it's just a case of we continually have to educate the public, educate the farmer, and make the point that they need these workers, and if you don't have these workers, every agricultural product is going to rise in cost. That's the way it is. It's not there's no overnight solution that I can see.
If I may add to that and reinforce that, one of the things that is happening to our agricultural sector is that the small farmer in particular are leaving agriculture anyway. The children don't want to work in the farm. The old farmer is tired of it, and he's exiting the nation. Another answer for that, and I think is we need new blood in the agricultural sector. And I think the answer for that is immigrant owners of land. If we make land available to legal immigrants to buy and purchase, we'll see the new fire building up in the agricultural sector and the small farm surviving and fighting to the end.